is an older word for what gets into people who eat what they shouldn't. I am not going to use it. The folklore that the word belongs to was being told in this part of the country for hundreds of years before the highway was paved, long before the restaurant, long before the app. The old stories used to need a trail, a camp, a winter, a mistake. This one only needed a route. The order was almost there.
The last order. I started doing DoorDash at the end of February. Not a story. The hospital cut my hours. The rent didn't. The gig app paid out the same day. I drove a 2014 Civic with a bad rear strut and a windshield crack that ran from the inspection sticker to the passenger side wiper. The car ran. That was the requirement. I worked late shifts because late paid better. Most of my deliveries were the predictable ones. Apartment buildings with confused buzzer panels, bar food at 1:30 in the morning, the same 3 families on the same 3 streets who ordered Wendy's at 1:15 on Thursdays. After a few weeks, I stopped seeing the addresses. I saw the route. I saw whether the porch light was on. I saw whether the dog would be a problem. I lived in a small city in the northern Midwest. I'd rather not say which one. The county outside the city was mostly farms in the south and woods in the north, old logging country, mostly second growth, mostly leased to hunting clubs that locked their gates from October through February. The app would sometimes accept an order from up there because the GPS pin was close enough to the city limit to count. It was almost never worth taking. The pay was low, the road back was 30 minutes of nothing, and the addresses up there were the kind that didn't have mailboxes. I took them anyway. Slow nights, empty queue. I'd rather be moving. The first order from the North County came on a Thursday in early March. I remember because the city had finally hit 40 degrees that day, and the snow was sliding off the south-facing roofs in heavy, wet sheets, and I had been thinking about whether I needed new wipers, and the order pinged at 11:47 at night. The pickup was a chain restaurant on the highway. A large beef pho, a side of spring rolls, 2 cans of unsweetened iced tea. The drop was 31 minutes north on a county road I didn't know, then a left, then a private drive labeled in the app only by coordinates. The customer's name in the app was M. Just the letter, no last name. The tip was already attached when I accepted, $22. A long delivery, sure, but most of my customers tipped after the food arrived when the app prompts them. M had tipped before I'd even pulled into the restaurant's parking lot. I figured she was a regular. Some people set tips by default. Some people pre-tip on long drives to make sure a driver actually takes the order. I'd seen it before. It was unusual, not impossible. What was unusual was the note.
Thank you for being so reliable.
I had never delivered to her before. I checked my history. The app keeps the last 60 days. My phone said no prior deliveries to that address. I had only been on the platform for 2.5 weeks. I told myself the note was a template. Some people said a default. Probably she had a regular driver and the message was a residue of that account setting. I took the pho. The drive out was slick. The wet snow on the day road had refrozen by midnight, and the county road past the city limit was a long curve of black ice that the county hadn't salted yet. I drove 40 when the limit said 55. The pho sat in the insulated bag on the passenger seat, and somewhere around the 12-minute mark, with the road completely empty and the trees on both sides closing in, I was tasting it. The broth. I had not opened the bag. I had not lifted the lid. The bag was sealed with a foil sticker and zip-tied for delivery. That was the restaurant's policy on long drives. But I was tasting the soup, the star anise and the clove and the slow heat of the chili oil. I could feel the warm fat coating the roof of my mouth. I told myself it was the smell. Pho smells strong. The bag is insulated, but it isn't sealed. The smell gets into the car. The brain confuses smell and taste all the time. That's why a clogged nose makes food taste like nothing. That's what I told myself. But it didn't taste like pho the way a smell tastes like pho. It tasted like a mouthful of broth. It tasted the way it would have tasted if I had stopped the car and opened the bag and eaten a spoonful. I rolled the window down. The cold came in, and the taste did not go. The last order continued. The turn came up at the 31-minute mark, exactly the way the app said it would. The county road I had been on was at least paved. The left turn was not. The drive was a single-lane gravel cut between two stands of pines that hadn't been trimmed back since the leaves fell, and my low beams disappeared into it for 15 feet before the gravel reflected back. I drove at 15 miles an hour, the pho bag pressed against the seatbelt of the passenger seat. The app showed 0.3 of a mile until arrival. The broth taste was gone. The cold came after. The car's heat was on. I had it set to 72, but the air in the cabin had gone the way it does when you crack the rear window in winter. A draft, low, around your ankles. The kind of cold that isn't outside cold, but feels like it's coming from somewhere specific inside the car. I checked the rear windows, both up. I checked the moonroof, closed. The blower was running, the vents were warm. The air at the floorboards was cold. In its place was a taste I have not been able to identify since. The metallic taste in your mouth when you have a fever and a tooth abscess at the same time. Like a penny kept in a freezer, I rolled my tongue against the roof of my mouth. The taste was behind my teeth, not on my tongue. A taste I was producing. The app said arriving. The drive ended in a clearing. There was no driveway. The gravel cut just stopped, the way an old logging road stops when the timber company doesn't need it anymore. The clearing was maybe 40 feet across, and the cabin was at the far edge, a single-story, rough-cut log structure with a covered porch and a single window lit from inside. The light from the window was the warm yellow of an incandescent bulb on a dimmer. There was no other car. There was no shed. There was no trash bin, no driveway shape pressed into the snow, no boot prints between the cabin and where I had stopped. The snow on the porch steps was clean. I sat in the car with the engine running and looked at the cabin, and I thought very clearly, people live in places like this. People order pho. And I thought it the way you think a sentence to overrule what your body is telling you. My body was telling me to leave the food on the porch and go. I got out of the car. Standing, the smell came first. Not the pho. Something underneath the pho. The wet cellar smell that old houses have when something has died in the crawl space. Except it was also cold. Cold the way a meat locker is cold. Cold the way a chest freezer is cold when you open it and the dry air rises up against your face. There was no chest freezer outside the cabin. There was no garbage in the woods. The cabin was clean. I walked the food to the porch. The door opened. I had not knocked. The app had not pinged the doorbell because there was no doorbell. I had not made it to the steps yet. The door opened 2 inches, 3 inches, and stopped. And from inside the cabin, a voice said,
"Thank you, just leave it on the chair."
It was a woman's voice. It was warm. It was the voice of someone who has had a long day and is grateful you came so far. There was a wooden chair on the porch, to the left of the door, with a folded blanket on the seat. I set the bag on the blanket. I said, "Enjoy your dinner." The voice said,
"I always do."
The door did not close behind me as I walked back to the car. It stayed 2 inches open. I did not look back at it. I knew without looking that no one was standing in the gap. I got in the car, I marked the order delivered, the app pinged. The tip was already there, of course. It had been there for an hour. The confirmation screen came up, delivery complete, and in the small line below, where my name usually appears, it showed a different name. Just long enough for me to catch the M. Then my name was there. The app asked me to rate the customer. I did not. I drove out. Halfway back down the gravel cut, with the cabin out of sight behind me, The broth taste was back, but there was no broth in the car anymore. The next morning, I called the company that runs the platform. Not customer service, driver support. There is a difference. The man who answered listened to me describe the address and the pre-tip and the note. He didn't say anything while I was talking. When I finished, he said, "That number has completed this route before." I said, "What?" He said, "The phone number on your driver account. It's been to that address." I said, "I've only had this account for 2.5 weeks." He said, "I know." There was a pause. I heard him typing. He said, "The route history on this customer account doesn't match your driver name." He stopped. "It matches the number." I asked him what that meant. He said, "I'd recommend you request a number change with your carrier." I said, "What was the driver's name? The one who had this number before me?" He hung up. I sat with my phone for a long time after that call. Then I did the thing you do. I searched. I went to the local news site for the city, and I typed DoorDash driver missing, and I scrolled. And a story came up from 7 months earlier about a 26-year-old delivery driver named Marie, who had taken a late order to a private address in the North County and had not returned. Her car had been found at the edge of a logging road 3 days later, with the door open and the keys in the ignition. There had been no signs of a struggle. The customer the order had been placed under did not exist. The account was active, the payment method was valid, the address was the same coordinates the app had given me. But when the deputies went to the cabin was empty, and the snow on the porch was clean. The article said that she had been the most reliable driver in her zone. I called the carrier. I asked when the phone number I'd been given had been released for recycling. The woman on the phone read me the date. It was 3 days after Marie's car was found. I did not take another late order for 2 weeks. I did not take any order of any kind that mapped to a pickup north of the city. I blocked the address in the app and set my zone as far south as the app would let me. I considered turning the phone off and buying a different one, but I had $1,100 in scheduled payouts on the SIM, and the rent was due on the 1st, and the next paycheck from the hospital was the 15th, and I needed both of them to land. So I worked the south side. I worked daytime. I worked the bars at close runs because they were short and busy. I drank water all day to get the taste out of my mouth. The taste did not go. It moved. The metal taste behind my teeth was the first to fade. By Wednesday, it was gone. The broth was harder. The broth would arrive when I was idling at a red light, when the car ahead of me had its brake lights on for too long, when the lane next to me had a delivery vehicle with that same insulated bag on the passenger seat. I would smell it without there being a bag in my car, and then I would taste it. The warm, fat slick on the roof of my mouth, and I would have to roll the window down and breathe cold air until my mouth was empty again. The new tastes were worse. A few days after the call, I started tasting things I had not eaten. A bite of an apple I had not bought. The salt and char of a piece of toast someone else had burned. The flat sweet of milk that was about to turn. Once, in the middle of the afternoon, I tasted a mouthful of meat I had never had. Gamey and warm and underdone. My mouth watered before I understood what I was tasting. For 1 second before the nausea, I wanted more. I pulled over and spit into a napkin. The napkin was clean. I was tasting somebody else's meals. I started keeping a list. I am not proud of this. The list was a coping thing. I would write down what I tasted and at what time, and I would notice when the tastes clustered. Breakfast tastes around 8 in the morning, lunch tastes around noon, dinner tastes around 6. Whoever I was tasting kept a regular schedule. The schedule was Marie's. I cannot tell you how I know it was hers. The list of foods I tasted, in the order I tasted them, on the second Sunday after the call, matched a meal. Breakfast, then lunch from a sandwich place, then a dinner of pho that I had never eaten and never ordered, and the dinner came at 11:47 at night. The same minute the original order had pinged. I quit the platform on a Tuesday. I deleted the app. I threw the insulated bag in a dumpster and paid the replacement fee online. I called the carrier and asked for a number change, and they gave me a new SIM and walked me through the port. I changed my email. I bought a different car, a used Corolla off Craigslist with a clean title, because the Civic had a stain on the passenger seat where the pho bag had sat that I could not get out. The stain was the shape of a hand. I am writing this from a kitchen in a different city. I am not going to say which one. The hospital here hired me on third shift, and I have not been hungry. The regular kind of hungry, the kind that ends in 9 weeks. I told no one for 8 days. I went to my hospital shifts and drew blood and helped with discharges and ate nothing from the break room because nothing tasted right. When someone asked why I wasn't eating, I said I was watching what I ate. On the 9th day, I told Dana. Dana worked the same overnight rotation. She had been a floor nurse for 14 years, and she did not leave things unexplained. I did not tell her about the cabin or the phone number or Marie. I told her only the symptom. Phantom tastes. Specific ones, arriving on a schedule, originating from somewhere outside my own body. She listened without interrupting. Then she said it wasn't in anything she'd read, medically. I asked what that meant. She said she had gone through a phase, a few years back, reading regional folklore, Upper Great Lakes material, the kind being transcribed by ethnographers in the early 20th century because it was already disappearing. She said there was something in one of those books, not a medical text, not a case study, a folklore collection, the author's name she couldn't remember. She described it the way she remembered it. A very old hunger that does not chase its host, that gets into a person through proximity, through carrying warmth into the cold for something that is always waiting, through being near the want without ever being the one who satisfies it. She said the book described symptoms in people who had been close to this thing. The tasting of food they had not eaten, the sense that the schedule was someone else's. I said, "What is it called?" She looked at the floor. She said, "The Wendigo." She said it the way you say a word you are not certain you are pronouncing correctly, the way you say a word you would have preferred not to say. Then she said she was sure there was a medical explanation, that I should talk to a doctor, and she picked up a chart and walked away from me. I understood. She had given me the name. I did not talk to a doctor. But sometimes, at 11:47 at night, I taste pho. It is not the same pho. It is a meal somebody else is eating, right now, in a clearing 31 minutes north of a city I no longer live in, with a tip already attached to the order and a note that says, "Thank you for being so reliable." And the driver, whose number used to be mine, whose number is now somebody else's, is on the road already. The app has decided who she is, and she does not know it yet.
The app does not know what it is doing. It is matching numbers, preserving routes, rewarding reliability. The data is not wrong. The older stories were not wrong about the hunger. They were wrong only about how far it would have to walk. What the app has done is what every modern thing has done with every old hunger, and has given it a route, a door, a driver, a way to be reliable. A phone number is a thing that gets passed on. A driver is a thing that gets replaced. A customer, once it is hungry, does not have to be either. This has been Hollow Grin. Until next time.